What's going on, gang? It's your boy Phantom. Happy Monday! Happy Monday! Happy Monday! You are now tuned into today's edition of EQ is Life. Thank you guys so much for riding and vibing with us each and every day. And as always, any questions and or comments, please feel free to get at us at EQisLIFE247 at gmail.com. That is EQisLIFE247 at gmail.com. Alright, so I'm not going to take up too much of your time. Let's get into today's lesson. And as always, we're working on the track On My Drizzy by my artist Motivation. Please get at us. 10 an inch. Artists also interested on having their song showcased on EQisLIFE. Get at us. EQisLIFE247 at gmail.com. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about the parameters of the plugin that we so affectionately love, the EQ, because I got a lot of questions, and thank you guys so much. Any questions anyone else has, feel free. The email is EQisLIFE247 at gmail, EQisLIFE247 at gmail. So I got a lot of questions about, hey Phantom, thank you so much for sharing these tips with us, but hey, what is this? What is that button? What is this button? And people were sending me screenshots and tagging and arrowing different devices on the equalizer. So I thought a good thing for us to do today would be to make sure everybody's on the same page with understanding the different parameters that this most powerful feature-filled processor has. I'm using the EQ3 by Avid and DigiDesign in Pro Tools. So let's dig into it. First and foremost, I'll solo this kick right here. Track On My Drizzy, artist Motivation. Solo this kick. Let's pull up this EQ. Okay, so we're in our mix window and we're working on the EQ for this channel right here, this kick drum track. Let's look at the different features we have. So first and foremost, this is a parametric equalizer. And the reason we know that is because that these parametric equalizers will have 3 main controls in addition to having several bands. Some have as few as 2 or 3 bands. In this case, we have 7 bands. Some have even more bands than that. More bands just get you more flexibility, more control. You can really get a lot done and operate on several places within a particular instrument sound and really carve out what you're looking for when you have a ton of bands. So okay, so each of these bands has 3 controls. And all of our main bands right here, our low frequency, our LMF, our low mid frequency, our MF mid frequency, HMF high mid frequencies, and HF high frequencies. Each of these control stations, if you will, has 3 functions. A Q, which controls how many frequencies will actually be attenuating or adjusting or adding and subtracting volume from, in addition to our main targeted frequency. What do I mean by that? So we see we have a tight Q right here and a tight Q. As you see, the numbers get higher as the Q gets tighter, the numbers get smaller as the Q gets wider. So we have this tight Q right here, about 5.3, and we're at about 4.17. You see us on the graphing chart right here. We're around a little before 500 hertz, and we're around -10 decibels of gain. All this can be seen on our frequency chart. So our Q will adjust how many frequencies we're working on in addition to the targeted frequency we have. So we have it at around 417 hertz, 417 cycles, and by adjusting the Q, I'm changing how many other frequencies I'm working on in addition to that one frequency. And you can literally see the change on the input and output meter. I'm taking away a ton of frequencies, so naturally I'm going to be outputting less decibels, right? Cool. So that is Q, guys. And generally speaking, when we're working in subtractive equalization, and please feel free to refresh yourself with our subtractive EQ video if you didn't get a chance to check it out yet either, please feel free to do so. So when we're working with a subtractive EQing method, this is really helpful and useful because now, because now I can adjust the Q, the bandwidth, the quality of, which is literally just a fancy way for saying how much of a instrument I'm going to be working on in addition to that target frequency. When we're cutting, it's very good. The general principle is to be working with higher Qs. The higher the Q, the tighter your cut will be. When you're working with boost, it's generally seen as a great idea to work with smaller Qs, anything from around 0.5 to 2.5 is really good for when you're boosting. But again, all these rules are meant to be broken. But generally, a higher Q, which is going to give you a tighter cut for when you're cutting, and a smaller Q for when you're boosting. All right, so that's Q, which is short for quality, but really you should think about it as the bandwidth or the amount of frequencies you're going to be working on in addition to your targeted frequency. All right, so frequency, of course, is where we're targeting 4.25, as you see right there, that dot. If you look at it on the graph, it's right there, right before 500 hertz. Boom. This is why, to me, this EQ is great too, because you have the graph right here. Hardware emulations are generally not going to have a graph. A lot of EQs, you really have to just trust your ear. When you're starting out, it's great to be able to visualize. Frequency, so that allows us to literally pick and choose where we're going to be working. And as you see, this low mid frequency band goes from about 100 to 1,000 cycles. That's the range that you can work on that in. So if you needed to work in other places, you of course would have to pull up other EQs. As you see, they all have a particular group of frequencies they're allowed to operate in. Kind of helps keep things organized and neat. And then lastly, Q for the quantity of frequencies we'll be working in, frequency itself to target the main frequency that you'll be attacking, and the gain, which allows you to boost and or cut in particular areas. So you see right here, I'm cutting 16.5 on my chart. I'm almost around 20. Pretty accurate charting. Here, I'm boosting 18, way at the top of this chart, 18 decibels. Boom, graphic chart. Allows us to visualize everything we're working on. Cool, so that's Q, or bandwidth, aka quality, frequency selection, as its name says, and the gain, which allows you to boost and or cut particular frequencies. Please, guys, I know I'm moving fast. If you have any questions at all, get at us. EQisLIFE 24/7 @gmail.com. EQisLIFE 24/7 @gmail.com. Corporate companies and coders looking to have their plugins or their applications demoed, tested, reviewed on the show, please email us or DM us as well. Definitely appreciate all the support. So, back into it. All right. So, we've talked about Q, we've talked about frequency, we've talked about gain. Of course, you have your input and output. which, as the name suggests, literally adjusts how much and or how little of a signal you will have. This goes down all the way to 20 decibels, up 6 decibels. So really good, really useful, very powerful, very flexible. I love the EQ3 by Avid and DigiDesign because I feel like it just makes such a great impact. Output, you can increase your output 6 decibels, decrease it all the way to 20 decibels. Why would these two functions be important? Well, it's really a good idea to make sure you always have appropriate levels and you're not too hot or too low going through your signal chain. So if I work on some stuff and I take it too much off, I can add some to make sure I'm going into the next unit with at least as much as I had in this unit, and vice versa. If I have too much coming out of the previous unit, I can lower it so I start hitting this unit properly, and it just makes my processing happen a lot more effectively as I'm using signals which are appropriate for the coding that these plugins have. And remember, please feel free to check out our earlier video on processing at the right levels if you're not sure what we're talking about. Use the information, it is there for you. Use the information, it is there for you. Okay, so in addition to that, right here on our input, we have a phase shift. What's the phase shift for? Really good when you're tracking in live drums, if you're using the same, if you have multiple microphones in different angles in different areas on the same source. So if you have a kick drum and you have a microphone on the inside of the kick drum and the outside of the kick drum, if you have a whole drum kit and you have overhead mics close to each drum, mics in the room itself, it's really good to hit this phase button as you continue adding and adding additional mics from that same source to make sure you're not creating any issues with phase in your mix. You hit this button and your drums disappear, you know you were okay with phase. If you hit this button and your drums sound really big and beefy, then you know you had phase issues. So, Q, frequency, gain, and of course our on and off button for each of these input and outputs. Phase cancellation button, or a phase button, phase shift button, goes by a lot of different names. And then our high pass and low pass filters, which can be turned on and off as the names as you see there, which have either a bell curve or the high pass and low pass shelf, which allow you to, as the name states, remove all of the lows and just let the highs pass, or remove all of the highs and let the lows pass and kind of create some of that lo-fi music that a lot of people are working on these days. You can definitely do that just with a very powerful equalizer. And again, you see me doing all this stuff with the stock stuff. Not to say I will not, as we progress, use other plugins, but really understand how powerful the plugins that come with your DAW are. So if you're not getting the sound you're looking for, please understand that it may be, in fact, not that you don't have enough plugins. The reason you may not be getting the sound you're looking for is because you're not trusting your ears enough. You're not taking the time to really understand what you're listening for and solve the problems that are presented in the program, in the song, in the voicing overs, in the sound effects, in the sample bank that you're working on. Solve the problems that are being presented to you. Use your ears, trust your intuition. You listen to music all the time. You make music all the time. You know what good music should sound like. As always, I'm Phantom Fuego. Keep pushing, keep grinding, and never forget, EQ is life. Take it easy, guys. I'm getting out of here.